Most professors are absolute geniuses in their fields, but how many were ever actually trained to teach? It's a huge question, right? And that's the gap we're going to dive into today. We're going to walk through a new roadmap for the modern university classroom, all inspired by Dr. Sabuj Ahmed's work, Pedagogy for Professors. Wow, this one sentence really hits home, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of everything. The old ways of doing things, well, they're just not cutting it anymore. And universities are now facing this massive question. What does it actually mean to teach in the 21st century?
So yeah, the whole sage on the stage thing, the classic lecture, is simply not enough. Let's be real, we're competing for attention with, well, everything. Today's students expect learning to be a two-way street, something interactive and meaningful, not just a one-way fire hose of information.
Okay, so let's dig into this crossroads. What's driving this huge shift, and what's really on the line for universities?
And you know where we have to start? With the students themselves. If we want to understand this change, we have to understand them. They aren't just bigger kids, they're in this really unique stage of life. And there is actually a name for it, emerging adulthood. It's this super critical time, when young people are figuring out who they are and what they're all about. So you can probably guess a really rigid my way or the highway teaching style, it doesn't just fall flat. It literally works against what they need developmentally. When you look at these 5 features, a picture really starts to form, doesn't it? We're talking about people who are exploring their identity, dealing with all sorts of instability, feeling stuck somewhere between being a teen and a full-blown adult. What this tells us is pretty clear. They don't need another lecture. They need empathy, they need conversation, and they need the space to explore, with some guidance, of course.
Okay, so if that's who they are, then what actually makes them want to learn? Well, for that, we can look at something called self-determination theory. It's a really powerful idea that says true motivation isn't really about getting a good grade. It's about tapping into 3 universal human needs. And here they are, the big 3: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. When you build a course around these ideas, you unlock that real motivation, the kind that comes from within. And this is so important to remember. Control might get you compliance, sure, but it's autonomy that sparks real, genuine engagement. So once you understand the student like this, it completely changes the professor's role. It has to. It's all about shifting from being the sage on the stage to becoming the guide on the side. A totally new way of thinking about teaching. And here's the difference in a nutshell. Traditional teaching, it's all about the teacher. But these modern approaches, like andragogy and heutagogy, flip that around. They're all about the learner. They're designed for adults who have their own goals and can take charge of their own learning journey. This table lays it out so clearly. You can see the evolution, right? The professor goes from being an instructor to a facilitator, and finally, to a mentor. And the point here isn't to give up authority, not at all. It's about using that authority in a new way to empower students to become learners for life. All right, so if you have this new identity as a teacher, it only makes sense that you have to design your courses differently too. The focus moves away from just cramming in content and toward building skills that students can actually use in the real world. And the secret weapon here is a method called backward design. It sounds fancy, but it's simple. Instead of starting with, what stuff do I need to cover, you start at the end. You ask, what should my students be able to do when this course is over? That one little flip makes sure every single thing you do in the class has a real, clear purpose. And you bet these learning experiences are not about sitting back and listening. We're talking about active learning. Things like the strategies you see here, they're all designed to get students off the sidelines and into the game. I mean, think about it. Something as simple as a think, pair, share can take a totally silent lecture hall and in an instant, turn it into a buzzing room where every single student is thinking and talking about the material. This way of thinking also completely changes how we see tests and assignments. We move away from assessment of learning, the big final exam that just ranks everybody at the end. Instead, we move toward assessment for learning. This means using things like quizzes and feedback while they're learning to help guide them, to help them improve, and to build up their confidence along the way. Okay, so last but not least, let's talk about bringing all this to life in the classroom of today, a classroom that's more diverse and more tech-filled than ever before. So, the big question is, how do you make a classroom that actually works for everyone? A great tool for this is the Universal Design for Learning Framework, or UDL. The 3 big ideas here are all about building in flexibility and choice. giving students different ways to engage with the material, different ways to see the information, and different ways to show what they know. The goal is simple: make sure every single student has a clear path to succeed. And of course, we have to talk about AI. The trick is to see it for what it is: a really powerful assistant. It's great for things like brainstorming or getting quick feedback. But what it can't do, what it should never do, is replace critical thinking. We're not just blindly adopting it. We're talking about smart, ethical integration. So, after going through all this, what does it really mean to be a professor who's ready for the future? Well, it's about being more than a lecturer. It's about being an architect of learning, a mentor, and a guide.
And this quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? It captures the huge responsibility here. A university isn't just a building where you pass on facts. It's a place where you literally help create the environment for students to build their own futures. And wow, what an incredible privilege that is.
So we've kind of laid out the map here, but the journey itself, that's personal for every educator. And the real question this whole idea leaves us with is a powerful one. Now that you have these tools and this new way of thinking, how are you going to shape the futures that are taking root right now in your classroom?